Shalom, shalom. Hello, hello. I'm Keats Ross. This is the PRAGMAGICK weekly liminal stream. Thank you for joining us. Sorry we're a little bit late. Of course, there's always technical difficulties when it comes with this nonsense. If you can hear us fine, say so. If you cannot, please also say so. And without further ado, I'll just jump right into it. Um, I'd like to invite a brilliant transdimensional wayfaring illustrator of wayward books and graphics to discuss the confluence between occult practice and funny books, or as they're commonly known, comic books. Eric J. Millar is the creator of such things as the Disruption Generator, a sort of anti-tarot and anarchic bibliomantic oracle, as well as creator of a multitude, and I mean multitude, of outsider graphic novels and illustrations. He is currently creating a new 400 plus component oracle entitled The Bottomless Bag, which he premieres every Monday on WeTheHallowed.org. And speaking of We the Hallowed, Millar has become the de facto illustrative soothsayer of our international magical media collective, straight from his car. Ladies and gentlemen, Eric J. Millar.
Hello, hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. Doing good. It's not too cold out yet, so I can comfortably sit in the back seat of my car.
I love it. That's that kind of punk rock spirit, I enjoy.
Yeah.
And also probably the
Hey,
most peace you've had in a while, I'm sure.
yeah, it is the quietest place I can go and not pay
Eh,
for it.
if the acoustics were good in a car, I'd record in there. But, I come from the bathtub in a shitty apartment on a 4-track, so we work with what you got,
Yeah, yeah. Well, my choices were this or the bathroom, and the bathroom there might have been a 3-year-old knocking on the door and coming in and joining us.
Which would be
So,
appropriate because, I think the discussion we're going to have tonight it certainly gripped me around that age. I think funny books, as
oh
I
yeah,
said in the intro, were, my intro to most creative outlooks and metaphysical knowings, as a kid. I did want to say a couple of things before we start, just to kind of give a little idea of what this conversation is going to entail. The comics, or the confluence of comics and the occult, is one that is often celebrated, with many accolades given to two historic mages, that is Alan Moore and Grant Morrison, and they are rightfully considered touchstones of that river bend. But while such works as Promethea and The Invisibles, which we will talk about, and they can't be understated as luminous works, I hope that Eric and I reveal some lesser known works and tethers within the comic and occult worlds. We come at this confluence as both creators and practitioners, not scholars, so back off. So we hope to delve deeply into the static other that is communed with to create such works. And with that, I just wanted to dive straight ahead and talk about what came first, the comic or the magic.
the comic,
Yeah.
definitely the comic for me. Like, I mean, I was getting comic books and stuff like that when I was 5 years old, probably, and I started drawing them shortly after. So
Right.
it kind of it's definitely that before the magic. But
All right. So
oh,
and
yeah,
I want to thank everyone in the chat too. They say, Eric, if you could just keep the mic a little bit further away. But I think
further away.
yeah, perfect. That
All right,
works.
there we go.
Everyone's a critic here at the PRAGMAGICK Liminal Stream. No, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in with us tonight. I couldn't have asked for a better cohort and kind of diving deep into this confluence than Eric Millar. Like I said in the intro, I don't. You've probably been doodling and drawing longer than I've been alive, most likely.
Probably,
Yeah,
probably.
because you
No,
said you started like at your son's age. You think?
probably a little bit after. I mean, I basically as soon as I could put a pen in my hand or a marker in my hand, I was probably holding one. So
Yeah,
And
that's
I
kind of
started telling stories with it when I was probably 5, because I would tell my mom stories and she'd type them out for me, and I draw little illustrations for them.
I love
So
it.
comics
Yeah, that's how I felt about writing. That's kind of my first foray into narrative structure and mythological folkloric ideas was through comic books. We can sit here all
mm-hmm,
day and talk about the ones that really gripped us and stuff, but I really wanted to have the touchstones that were kind of further or deeper
mm-hmm.
than, say, the Invisibles or Promethea, or books of magic, or
Oh yeah.
Sandman, or and talk about some of the lesser known, lesser celebrated people that we revere so much. And I think one of them that we talk about all the time is Peter Milligan.
Oh, definitely.
So what was your like first foray into Peter Milligan's work?
The first time I knew who Peter Milligan was Shade the Changing Man.
Mm-hmm.
I bought a bunch of I bought a box of random Vertigo comics from my comic book store, and half of it was like 90% of Peter Milligan's run on Shade the Changing Man,
I love
and
it. From the planet Meta.
yeah, blew my mind. And it's even more mind blowing when you look back at where it came from, because like even like Steve Ditko, like
Mm-hmm.
super trippy shit, but Milligan took it somewhere else completely. And then after that, I kind of tried my best to keep up with his career, but that guy was prolific, or is
Yeah.
prolific.
It's funny too because he was considered part of that British invasion, with Alan Moore, Grant Morrison, and even Jamie
Yeah.
Delano, who
Oh yeah.
I'm sure we'll talk about because Jamie Delano was a big part of my foray into occult and comics. But like for some reason kind of slipped under the radar, and I think it's because he's not as outlandish a character as, say, Alan Moore or Grant Morrison is. There's this like hyper sigil idea, right, where Grant Morrison and Alan Moore are kind of living in this dreamscape, and they're the art is mimicking life, and vice versa. But Peter Milligan's always taken this kind of very back end approach to his writing, where he kind of lets them work itself out.
Yeah, yeah. I think like Milligan's stuff has really benefited from having great artists work on it more than his writing.
Mm,
Than like because even in his early days, he had Brendan McCarthy,
right.
and that stuff is probably the trippiest Milligan stuff you can find. Is the stuff he did way, way back in the '70s and '80s with Brendan McCarthy.
Yeah, but back to Shade, that was a big one. I think
Yeah.
people like to argue all the time, and this is a dumb argument. We will never have this argument because it means that you don't like comics if you have this argument. This whole DC versus Marvel bullshit. But DC should get some credence for Vertigo and the Vertigo imprint
Oh,
and allowing all of this to exist.
oh,
I think,
definitely,
yeah,
definitely.
first and foremost.
Yeah, they were really the first people that tried to have an adult imprint in mainstream comics.
I mean, and
And
yeah, Karen Berger, like
yeah,
she as an editor was, I just think totally unsung hero of this entire confluence of what we're talking about, occult and
oh,
art.
definitely, definitely.
There's a there was an academic paper that came out in 2015 by Kenneth Granholm. And this was his thesis, was talking about superheroes and comic books within, the occult world or occultnik
Mhm.
ideas. And in his intro, he put it very, I think, succinctly. He says, studies of religion and popular culture are increasing in number, but it is still fairly uncommon to find treatments of comic books in general introductions and collected volumes. This is a shame, as comic books are perhaps the popular cultural products where the occult is most prominent, as well as one of the few remaining popular culture arenas where creators are still relatively free to experiment with unorthodox subject matter. Both of the above mentioned are likely due to comic books being viewed as an unworthy pursuit, mirroring the sentiments directed towards the occult itself for centuries, even when compared to areas such as heavy metal or science fiction TV shows starting to be recognized as valid subjects of study. So there's always been a torch, shared marathon, I think, when it comes to occult studies and this outsiderdom of comic books and
Oh,
and
definitely,
and the love of comic books.
definitely,
And
definitely. I
I
mean,
was gonna
even
say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
yep, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, we could go through part of part of what I thought, it would be so uninteresting, is if we kind of went through the lineage, right? We talked
Mhm.
about the golden age, and the silver age, bronze age. We talked about the many eras of comic books. But the fascinating thing that I think about all the time is, like, in the silver age, when science started to take a back seat, that superpowers weren't so much science based. The Flash getting his, super speed with a lightning bolt and chemicals, or you know what I mean? Like, it
Yeah.
wasn't so kind of pseudo scientific. That's when they started getting into the weird and the
Oh yeah.
wonderful. And it was like Ditko, with Doctor Strange, who, you know, I've heard he was a really straight laced person, that he probably had never taken acid in his life, which is just astounding to me. Because, like,
Oh yeah.
Doctor Strange, back in the day, they even called it the black arts, that Doctor Strange was a master of the black arts and stuff. But it was this new kind of, it was along that same renaissance, right? The 60s 70s kind of new age spiritual movement and stuff, and how the mystique of the occult and everything kind of funneled into comic books as probable, bases for superpowers, for superheroes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. It was yeah, Dicko. I think him and Jack Kirby both kind of spearheaded that movement of bringing like spirituality and spiritualism into it. Because even like Kirby had a title that was, I can't remember what it was called. Like it was called Beyond or something like that, where he
Right.
he explored spiritualism. He explored like poltergeist activity, like altered stuff, and then like from that point forward, they kind of allowed the woo to give powers to people over, radioactive spiders.
The woo to wonder. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
we were going to talk too. I had mentioned, like, God, I always want to talk about Green Lantern. I think he's like one of the last people you think of, or at least, the last comic you think of, even though Grant Morrison's now writing the new Green Lantern run. But
yeah,
to me, Green Lantern was the perfect, or was like perfectly analogous to magic, right? Conforming reality with someone's will. And, like,
yeah.
what better superpower, I'm sure, for an illustrator such as yourself, or for anyone with a creative imagination, than being able to create constructs out of light, hard constructs, or whatever
Oh
the mind
yeah,
thinks of. And I was thinking earlier that, like, it's funny too, because the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott, was a magic based
yeah. He had a
character.
magic lantern.
He
Like
was
it
a
wasn't it
magic
wasn't
user.
a wasn't a lantern from another planet. It was a magical railway lantern. And like
Right.
you can't think of a more magical weakness than wood.
Right.
His
Wood.
his
Yeah.
weakness was wood.
It's true. It's like, it writes itself. But, when they try to get away from it, and they try to kind of bring it back to this understanding of science fiction and stuff, with the Green
Yeah,
Lantern Corps being, the space police sector 2684, whatever, that it's this universal space police that, get their, constructs, or this, the power of will is this green color that's magnified by Oa, which is this planet. It seemed to try to go in a scientific roundabout, or a sci-fi roundabout, but still couldn't quite skirt, the magical, like, origins of the Green Lantern idea.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think there's any way that the idea of Green Lantern could totally get away from magic. It's just it seems impossible. I mean, you could go with the whole Asimov quote where technology gone far enough is unrecognizable from magic. Like it's the same thing,
Right.
but that's not really what they were trying for with Oa that stuff. I mean, it's got to be magic.
And yeah, there's this like unspoken kind of obvious tether when it comes with magic, when it comes to, consorting with the other, quote unquote, this idea of something outside of our reality constructs our time and frequencies and vibrations, and of course I think in the 70s there was a huge push towards science fiction that, oh, it's this, it's a cosmic thing, right? Like,
Yeah,
even though Fantastic Four was ahead of their time with the cosmic
yeah,
rays and whatnot, but like there's still something that they were trying to shelf. It's almost that it got too woo for a time in comics, and
yeah.
also there was this obvious pushback with the Comics Code Authority stuff coming out, you know, uh, and early on to get it to be more of a kind of, I hate to say Bible thumping, but you know what I mean, like
Well, I mean,
to
when you get to a comics code, it's very Bible thumping.
yeah, yeah. But then when they, the rebellious attitude towards that with, like, Werewolf by Night and Tomb of Dracula, and a lot of the the creepy, scary stories things later on, they were
Oh yeah,
trying. That was the rock and roll, right? The rock and roll
Uh,
was kind of this occult exploration within comic books,
yeah. That was when the hippies took over, and
right?
I think it hit Marvel way harder than it hit DC
That's
because
true,
Marvel had like Jim Starlin at that time was into Carlos Castaneda and all of that stuff. Like they were very much hippies.
right?
Like Steve Gerber was really into the occult at the time when he created like Man Thing and Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially, yeah, there you go. To me, when I pray to an altar, it's Howard the Duck.
Oh yeah.
That's front and center, but mainly it's just a VHS copy of the George Lucas produced first ever Marvel film, Howard the Duck.
Yeah. The best movie ever made.
It's my Lord and Savior. So. But yeah, and without getting too much into just a lot of the tit for tat, what company did this or who did this and this and
Yeah.
that, you know I wanted to shed a little light about, there was an escape from it. you know it was embraced, then it was kind of pushed to the side, and then here come the British invasion,
Hmm.
in the 80s, and the Vertigo imprint, and it's still pumping to this day. A lot of what adults consider actual literature are based on the comics made of that time.
Yeah.
And one of the comics, I feel like it's undersung, probably right before he was about to break big, in that way, was Grant Morrison's Animal Man.
Oh
And
yeah.
him taking a kind of, like, using diegesis to input himself within the comic, to have Animal Man, you know, meet Grant Morrison, the writer of the comic, was, to me, that was like the biggest revolutionary way of kind of minimizing the universe while still making it vastly huge. Like, everything was off limits after that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And I can actually say there is like Grant Morrison's Animal Man run like blew my mind so hard that I made a book because of it. Like
Was this
the
Coyote Dreaming?
yes, Coyote
Yeah.
Dreaming was directly inspired by the Wile E. Coyote issue of Animal Man, where Wile E. Coyote comes to the real world and deals with just like an infinite world of pain because he's still a cartoon character. And he gets run over by a truck and he feels it, and he feels coming back to life, and it's just this horrible, painful thing, and nobody understands it.
Well, that's like, I was thinking about that earlier today. I was like, that's what Coyote Dreaming is. Yeah, that's that, Castaneda, trip, into the desert, but it's the, yeah, it's the coyote kind of reaching singularity. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Well, and yeah, to me that was huge, that run in and of itself, like I said, showing that, the forms of narrative are off, they're there's no rules, there's no rhyme, there's no reason, that doesn't need
Yeah.
to be, you know. And in such a two-dimensional art space where you're a panel driven kind of narrative, to kind of break those confines, I hate to use the term, you know, breaking the fourth wall, because I think a lot of comics heads will think about Deadpool, and it's like, no, I'm not fucking talking about Deadpool. um
Yeah. Yeah, it's not
but
about talking to the audience. It's
right,
about
yeah.
talking about the world and breaking their fourth wall.
Well, and to me, that was like the perfect seed of, you know, Grant Morrison's whole hypersigil idea. You
Hmm.
know, kind of in putting him into the story, making a micro universe of, you know, the magician's realm. And
Yeah.
and you know, we can talk all day about the Invisibles and what he went on to do with that, and you know, a lot of the harrowing stories that he himself as a writer, you know, kind of discovered. You know, there's that famous anecdote with him giving King Mob a, you know, a bacterial infection in
Yeah,
his
and then he.
face, and then Grant Morrison ends up
Hmm.
having a bacterial infection in his face. And so, you know, from then on, like, King Mob is just a really cool, you know,
Yeah.
doesn't go through anything.
Yeah, yeah. He's pretty normal beyond there.
Yeah. And
But
like, no, go ahead.
I think his trial run with that was actually the end of his Doom Patrol run,
Mm,
because at the way the series ends, it ends in this utopian world run by Danny the Street.
that's
Like the
right.
sentient street becomes the world where everybody's protected and everybody's happy and nobody has to worry about anything. And it's almost like he was trying to will that utopia into existence, and then he figured out he couldn't, so we kind of dialed it back and made the Invisibles.
Right. There is a lot of like interference from your mic. Do you think that's just a web connection or?
It might just be a web connection. Is it a lot of crackling?
Yeah, it's like digital detritus. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds cool, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix that. I'm on a crappy connection, so.
Oh yeah, no worries. Uh, didn't want to hijack the flow because, like, yeah, what we were talking about earlier, like what I really wanted to talk to you about, especially as a creator of comics, you know, we find a lot of these tethers. To me, it's like a lot of hindsight, like stuff that I read as a kid that I'll later find out, like, holy shit, that was, you know, that was a magical working, or, you know, all of this like really informed my, you know, my magic, you know, my anarchic style of magic, or, you know, audiomancy or whatever. Like, when did you start messing with those confines as a creator?
As a creator, I actually came to that kind of thing pretty late, to be honest. Like it was probably about a decade ago at this point where I was trying anything like other than really normal stuff. And like the first couple times I tried it, it was more of like a like experimenting with cut ups and things like that. Like it was just kind of like edging on magic and not quite actually magic. And then I mean I would say that it became magic much closer to now, like within the last 5 years.
Well, let's,
But
yeah, let's talk about that. And like, maybe we should kind of define what we mean by magic. So when you say when it became magic, what do you mean?
it was a more willful. It, I was trying harder to take control of the things that were coming out of me. I don't know. I
Right.
don't know. It became more of a willful thing. Like they have intention. They aren't just being made to be made. They have intention.
Yeah. No, I
So
agree. It's funny because I remember, you know, Saul on Twitter had made
mhm.
some tweet where he's like, if I hear anyone talk about hypersigils and talk about fucking incredible or invisibles again, you know, I was laughing because I had just done, you know, that podcast with Doug about sigils, and you know, I
Yeah.
didn't really, it wasn't very erudite about, you know, what I meant about making that last album. a hyper sigil, you know. And I guess what it came down to is like, yeah, I was creating a story to live out. Like
Yeah.
I was creating, you know, annals of time within a micro universe to mirror what I'd hope my future self would, you know, traverse. But I was also very like like weary of, you know, lollipops and rainbows. Like I knew it would, if I could at least kind of construct the tribulations, like it would, I could still have tribulations. They wouldn't just be as surprising or as rough, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of like trying to map it out before you've seen the land, in a
Yeah,
way.
exactly. Yeah, if like I think that's what it comes down to, you know, when, you know, talking about, well, and then, you know, the adverse to that is like the Alan Moore thing, where it's like, fuck it. You know,
Yeah.
like, you know, those two wizards have been feuding forever. But you know,
Well, I mean,
that I
unless you ask them, they're just kind of like, meh,
oh yeah.
call it a feud, but we
I
don't
think it's
really
like the
give
most
a shit.
passive aggressive feud like in the history of comics. People love to write about it too. I'm like, who gives a fuck? It's two old successful men. Like
Yeah, and I,
they,
I think they just ignore each other. I
yeah,
don't think it's a feud. I think it's just apathy.
which is like far more baneful.
Yeah, exactly. That's way more powerful.
Well, you know, you wanted to, I thought we could dive into some kind of under the radar pieces and talk about them. You know, like
All
I
right.
said in the intro, like we could have an entirely different stream just talking about the Invisibles or how great Grant Morrison or great Alan Moore is. You know what I mean? Neil Gaiman. Like we
Yeah,
could, yeah,
everybody's heard that a
everybody's
million
heard that.
times.
Yeah. So
That's,
yeah,
that's all anybody
talk,
talks about.
give me some weird ones and what they're about.
All right, I'll go back to the Peter Milligan from earlier. I'll talk about one of his earlier collaborations with Brendan McCarthy called
Yeah.
Rogan Gosh, where it's an exploration of like Indian Eastern uh, just trippy religion, and like I have never seen such a trippy exploration of Indian mysticism in my life. Like the paintings that Brendan McCarthy does are just absolutely breathtaking and amazing. Like they're impossible to describe,
Yeah.
honestly. And you can kind of see Peter Milligan just being off the leash with his writing. Like he's definitely exploring things that he wouldn't normally explore and not giving a shit.
Have you been privy to like the scripting at all? I wonder what that looks like.
Oh, I don't even know. I
Yeah.
wish. I wish. I bet it's amazing.
Because I think we should talk about that. Just like what, you know, the relationship between a comic book artist and a writer, and like the
Oh
many
yeah.
different variations of how the two, you know, commune. Like
Oh yeah.
you could have
Yeah.
someone
And
as thorough as like say Alan Moore. You know, Grant Morrison's pretty thorough too.
yeah.
But then you can have people like writers, and what I'm gathering from like Milligan and what you're talking about is he'll just have some wishy-washy poetic shit and goes, have at it. You know?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Well, I mean, like one of the legendary like scripters that I know basically puts nothing into it is Chuck Dixon.
Oh, of
He
course.
Chuck
He
Dixon has
created
a
Bane.
like yeah, but he has like a 4 word panel description and lets the artist go. 'Cause
No.
he doesn't care. He's getting his
Bane
paycheck.
break Batman back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He can write 100 words and make just as much money if he wrote 10,000 words.
Now, have you been privy to like a congregation of both kind of minds meeting in a sort of third mind, you know, as William S. Burroughs would call it?
Uh, I mean, I honestly think that Milligan and McCarthy probably had that
I love it.
because
Yeah.
their work together seems like something that's trans it transcends. what I see in a lot of other collaborations.
Because
But
that's what I'm absolutely stoked to discover. Yeah, there are a couple pairings of writers and artists, even some modern, that can create an oeuvre like only them two together could create.
oh, definitely, definitely.
And as I don't know, as someone who writes and as someone who illustrates, I think that's like the hardest. It's like winning a lottery almost.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
we do well great together, but we haven't really done like a narrative comic,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Like we do little stuff here and there, but like I've never worked with a collaborator that I jived with that much.
You're right.
Or
Yeah, cuz
it always felt like a job. Like
yeah.
they give you their words and it feels like a job.
Yeah. Do you do anything kind of, how do I put it? Are there any like transcendental states? Is there any liminal, ritual work to, create? Because you're prolific. I imagine that it just kind of pours out of you whenever, wherever.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is now. Like I get into this state like with basically no work anymore.
Hmm.
Like if I sit down and I have a pen in my hand and paper in front of me, I'll make something.
So
I
yeah,
mean,
you just show up. That's the
yeah,
point.
that's it.
Yeah.
Something will come out. And 9 times out of 10 it'll be something I'm mostly okay with. But I mean, back before, probably about 8 years ago, I used to have to do a lot of work to get into a space. Like I would sit and I would try to kind of get into hypnagogic states, get into trance states. And sometimes I would sit there and wait for like an hour or two before an image would even come to me, and I could work with it. Now I can sit in front of a piece of paper and like 30 seconds later I got something. I just let my hand go.
Yeah,
So
I wonder if there's just too much pomp and circumstance a lot when it comes to using occultnic, techniques to create. I do it with audiomancy or whatever, but it becomes a thing. The process becomes an art in and of itself, and it's not really about what comes out, you know?
yeah,
And like it's the same, with writing. When I was working on that comic book with the band Spare Spells, I would just write these outlines, and it got to a point where I was kind of um inadvertently, I didn't know it at the time, but I was loosely writing a narrative about how the band would unravel, or how the group would unravel, and it did. You know,
yeah,
you don't see it on the paper. You don't have a comic book to look at to see that because it's been lived, like the ghost has already
yeah,
moved on, kind of a thing.
yeah.
I was
Well, I don't
thinking,
know.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
For me, like yeah, for me, my stuff is generally at this point. It's like I'm bringing a lot of disparate pieces together, and I don't know the shape of a thing until I'm done making the thing. And I'm letting the art itself communicate with me.
I'm
Like
interested to hear,
my
have
last.
you oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, go ahead.
Well, I was just wondering if you had come across any, comics that have felt like that, like popular comics that have moved
Uh,
you.
well, I wouldn't say that I like they are popular comics,
I mean, yeah,
but there
popular
was
is a terrible word to use.
there's a there's a graphic novel by a Canadian artist called Martin Vaughan James called The Cage, where it's a surrealist graphic novel where the images and the text don't go together at all at any point. You can't figure out like the it's not about a story because it's not a story. It's just this exploration of a ruinous wasteland, and you see like weird twisted beds, you see like rotted out walls, and the work is trying to figure out what he's trying to say. Like there's something there, and there's a message that you could tell that either he was getting or he's trying to send out, and I can't decode it, but it blows my mind because it's like it shows me that comics can be something bigger than what people see comics being, more than
Yeah.
any other work I've ever seen. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a spiritual experience reading that book. It's you can feel the puzzle pieces kind of trying to slip together while you're reading it.
I love it.
But
Yeah. That's, that's kind of, I think, what hit me when I was young, to bring it back to the Animal Man run, that morphogenic genetic field or whatever that's in it.
yeah,
And Morrison talks about it. It's like this point, um, where all things kind of meet, and like for
yeah,
him to hit the point where it refracts at you, or reflects to you, that you're in the point. It is very obviously that hermetic idea of as above so below, but in a narrative structure, and as when it comes to writing, when it comes to, because scripting is so sequential, like panels are
yeah.
so sequential. Comic books can be absolutely sequential, and to have it rip around and like flick you in the butt, you know, and say, huh, and
Oh
then
yeah,
flip back, was like, that meant the world to me. That was a revelatory moment for sure.
yeah, yeah. I felt a lot the same way with Alan Moore's Swamp Thing,
Yes,
like revealing the green,
the green
and like
meant,
I
yeah. Maybe we can
yeah. I
describe
mean,
the
I
green
still
real
think
quick.
that, oh my god, it's the consciousness of the world,
Yeah.
essentially, or of the plant life of the world. It's all the plant life comes together, and they're all tethered together by this I don't even know what you'd call it, like a multi-dimensional area.
So, fancy you bringing up the green. I have a quote. Um, and it's from that same academic paper, and he talks about Swamp Thing. And he says, when Moore started writing the series in 1984, he made a dramatic revelation. We thought that Swamp Thing was Alec Holland, who originally was the scientist that had a chemical explosion, science explosion, and got merged with the Swamp Thing. Very golden age. And he somehow
Yeah,
transformed into a plant, but it wasn't. Alan Moore thought it was a plant that thought it was Alec Holland. The revelation was made in an equally dramatic fashion. Swamp Thing is shot, and the doctor dissecting it finds it, to his astonishment, that its organs are nothing more than crude, non functional approximations of human ones. As you can't kill a vegetable by shooting it through the head, as Moore says. The Swamp Thing revives, exacts revenge, and escapes, going on to assume a role as protector of all plant life on Earth, being in contact with all plant life through the astral plane like the green, and gaining new powers such as being able to travel vast distances near instantaneously simple or near by being able to travel vast distances near instantaneously, simply by dissolving its body and regrowing it somewhere else. So I love, that's what I was talking about, that like reflection moment where,
mm-hmm.
and that movement from the golden age comics, into this kind of silver and bronze age, where it ixnayed the idea that everything had to have some sort of pseudoscientific thing. And at the fault of using the word, it got meta, right? It was a
Yeah,
plant that thought it was Alec Holland. And I love this idea that all of its innards were formed like fake, you know, uh, coffee table fruit, of
yeah,
organs.
yeah, yeah. That it was amazing.
Yeah.
It's
And the green, yeah, the
especially for
green
that
being
time.
this rhythm, this ancient hum of life, of the earth breathing, and everything that's green.
Yeah,
And then we get into, and this is kind of, to me, a lot of the pagan ideologies and stuff that came, within a lot of comics during the time. I think it was Grant Morrison that brought up the red, which in Animal Man,
yeah,
he went further with the red, and the red is, all, it's the animalistic, it's the anima of life, you know.
Yeah.
And then there's the rot, which is like the black, and the gray is like the fungus. And I love that. And it has to be said though, in recent years, and this is true with the Green Lantern Corps, there's this real need to categorize things by color and emotion, or
Yeah.
color and to me that's as exceptionally candle work, that's spell work, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's absolutely
Well,
like
and
translatable.
oh yeah, definitely. And like when it first happened, like in the '90s, they were all about it being them being elementals. They were trying to bring in different elements instead of colors. It was you know he was a plant elemental. Animal Man was like a, I don't even know, like a meat elemental.
Yeah, it's the red.
Yeah,
They call it something of limbs, like the I forget it. I can look it up, but it's yeah, it's got a
yeah,
great brutal like hardcore metal name for it.
yeah. Well, and like even like Neil Gaiman got into it. He did like a one shot for something the Geek. I can't remember the character's name. Just remember it being the Geek, and he was a doll elemental. It's like that's not even an element. Just like pulling out of nowhere. Just it's a doll elemental.
That sounds very
Like
Gaiman-esque, though. I mean, come on, a
yeah.
doll.
Oh,
He's
definitely,
married.
definitely.
He's married to a doll, so there you go.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah. But they call it the Parliament of Limbs. Is what
So
the
that's an
red is
amazing name.
called. It's I'm like, God,
That's an
this is
amazing
why I love
name.
comic books too. You know, and there's also talk about like the great supercharged synapse, and this weird traversing from as a kid to an adult and experience these things. It hits the same points. You know what I mean? It's almost like
Yeah,
time travel with content, like, or with brain patterns that we had when we were young. There's no need for a lot of the pomp and circumstance of like a lot of the heavier handed um occultnic works, right? When the
yeah,
same elements and the same punches are being thrown through these beautiful folkloric tales.
yeah. And it seems like a lot less work to me. Like I'm honestly amazed that there aren't more books like The Invisibles or Promethea, where they're trying to make a definite magical work out of comics. It's all kind of done in a backhanded way usually.
It's like, yeah, they do
Like they're
it and
not
then they
outright
say,
doing it.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I've known some that are just like some kind of independent ones that they just, I think, wanted to be known more as a comic writer and put out a comic than
yeah,
actually wanted to write comic books. You know what I mean? There's a, like what
yeah,
you're saying, there's a lot of that backhanded way. And what's more, in vogue right now in the mystique of the occult, you know? Um,
yeah,
but like it's very, yeah, it's become such an aesthetic, and that's also something I wanted to talk to you about is modern comics and the occult. And yeah, you haven't seen any. I guess you answered that question.
yeah, yeah. I will say that I haven't read a lot of recent comics. Like I've fallen out of like comics, like new comics, a couple of years. Just nothing grabs me other than a couple here and there, like Silver Surfer Black. At points, I would consider that nearly a spiritual work, but
Now,
beyond that,
was that
nothing's even
Donny
grabbed me.
Cates, or was that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was Donny Cates. I'm trying to remember the artist name. It was the artist did the Luther Strode series.
Yeah, it doesn't come to mind. But like,
Yeah,
I always think of my favorite, but this is again, like, we might be shifting more again, and this might be privy to why, you know, the occult is still used as an aesthetic. And when I say occult, most people think of astrology or tarot, you know, which to
right.
me, I mean, tarot a lot less, obviously, but there's still planetary stuff in it. to me, that's more of the cosmic switch, right? Science, metaphysics,
Yeah.
um, cosmic. And it seems like there's always
Yeah.
this general push into the cosmic, realm within, writing, especially in popular comics and whatever. So it's no surprise to me that although there are some, I mean, Hellstrom has a TV show out. Marvel is doing a
Yeah.
show in Hell, and it's based in Portland, Oregon. Funny enough.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I just watched like the
Oh
first
wow.
2 episodes. They changed a lot of the back end, um,
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I'm not
but
surprised.
and that's I think they're diving deep into they really want Ghost Rider to work. They really want uh who else is coming? I mean, Doctor Strange obviously is a big one, but now
Yeah.
he's merely going to be used as a tool to split the multiverse so that they can have Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield in a movie. Like it's like the occult is
Yeah.
approved
Oh, definitely,
possibility.
definitely. Yeah, they're trying way too hard with that now, and it's. But like, if you look at Doctor Strange and like all of those, they're trying. They're even trying to like kind of explain everything through science over mysticism.
Yeah.
Like in the Marvel movies, they're trying to explain it away.
Well, wasn't that terrible, like, abridged version of that Asimov quote in the Thor movie, which is that the magic is just it's just science you don't understand
Yeah.
yet. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Which I guess is fair, but that's I don't think that's the point of it. I don't think the point is to understand. I think the point is to experience. And I think
Right.
that's where the shit like curbs. That's where the river changes for me when it comes to that. There can be both and they can be parallel, but I think one is more of an emotional resolve and an emotional experiential kind of idea that is personal to the many different facets or variables of human life, whereas the other one is a tried
Yeah.
and true tested mother approved kicks commercial.
Hmm. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And I mean, that's really what comics embrace, and that's kind of what most people see of the comics is the other approved kicks version of comics,
Hmm.
where you have to dig pretty deep to not get that.
Well, there's and I feel like a lot of the writers too, that British invasion, they're still haunted. um I'm not sure if Peter Milligan actually practiced. I'm sure he did, but I
Yeah.
couldn't find anything explicitly saying he did. Jamie Delano,
Yeah.
I haven't found anything that says he explicitly has. Although, Jamie Delano is where is it? Uh, he's in the first. He's in the first Rituals and Declarations. Oh, this one, I believe. Which is a new kind of occult magazine that came out, and that's kind of what uh it's I think he's in the first one or the second one. The first one. Yeah, it's gonna be the first one. They kind of melt together. They're great magazines. Um, totally brilliant stuff. Oh no, he's in the second one. Excuse me. Rituals and Declarations, small press, independent British, UK publisher. Great short stories, little essays, poems, art, all having to do within the metaphysical realm. And I get it, as a fan, being a fan of small press and being a fan of all of the above. And I get the second one and realize that, hey, Jamie Delano, I haven't seen him in a while. What the hell has he been up to? You know, and he's a comic writer that I hold very dear. Excuse me, just
Yeah.
a little on mic burp, but I hold him very dear because he, uh, at a really dark time in my life, when I went to the hospital I won't get into specifics, but all I had on me was a copy of Hellblazer's Original Sins. And like when I
Mm,
first kind of came to and started feeling better, that's the only thing I had to kind of take me away from the, the terrible, white walled abyss that is a hospital. And
yeah,
I hold him, to me, is the definitive Hellblazer or Constantine writer. Uh, I love
yeah,
Milligan's done work on it. And then here's the other fascinating thing, especially with
mhm.
all the occult British invasion people, they all work on the same titles. Like they weave in and out.
Oh yeah,
You know, Delano's done Animal Man, I'm pretty sure. Milligan, I think, has too. And, they all have done
yeah,
Constantine or Constantine, as I'm told. It's actually pronounced, but fuck it, I'm American. Um, but they've all woven this web together, worked on a lot of the same titles, be it big as in Batman or small as in, you know, Hellblazer. And so I always found that fascinating, is
yeah.
that here's this crew of, punk rock, some ceremonial magician, some chaos magician, kids all kind of coming up together within the popular comics industry. And they all had to kind of tether with each other the same annals of folklore within, these modern kind of Greek myths. It's,
Oh
yeah, it's
yeah,
just,
oh yeah.
it's,
It's like they all feel driven to hit those same marks too. Because
yes,
I know even Grant Morrison has done Hellblazer stuff, and the
right.
couple issues of his that he's done are they're amazing, and they're definitely Grant Morrison comics. But
Yeah.
they all seem driven to write certain characters, though.
Isn't that funny? Yeah, they all kind of, though I think the oddest one out for me, obviously, was Peter Milligan with Ecstatics, which I hold dear. Uh,
Yeah,
with Mike Allred. To me, not very occulty. I'm sure everything can be occulty if you make an argument for it. And I think that's
yeah,
kind of where I'm coming to the conclusion of, there was a part of me that wanted to define kind of what I meant by occult when it comes to comic books, and not merely talk about Dr. Fate or, Dr. Occult
yeah.
or, these golden age funny book occult
Oh yeah,
characters.
the occultist.
But
Yeah,
also, it's not about using the aesthetic of the occult. And I think there's a big conflation too, um, with the supernatural, that the supernatural is occult. And I think that's fair.
yeah,
I think that could be part of it.
yeah,
But to me, the occult means that the writer actually put magical intent into the work, and it shows on the page and it envelops you as such.
yeah,
And it's funny that all these writers end up, yeah, playing with the same toolbox of characters.
yeah.
Like I
And
wonder if these are archetypes. I mean, they have to be for an occultist. I mean, I think we're both working class. We're both like, outsiders.
oh yeah,
Of course, we're gonna gravitate to John Constantine. You know what I mean? Or of
oh
course, we're
yeah,
gonna gravitate to Shade the Changing Man, being from Planet Meta. That
yeah,
kind of, you know, either he's a red-haired mod or he's a, uh, you know, an obsessive gangly sort. Like
yeah.
it's, or the Invisible shit, which was like the army of outsiderdom. That
Oh
was
yeah, yeah,
like the reality bending, espionage thriller that is the Invisibles, which was this cast of outsiders that use occult techniques to overthrow reality and the conspiracy, you know?
yeah,
So I think there's a reason why comic fans such as ourselves and comic writers gravitate to those archetypes. There's a reason why Peter Milligan and Alan Moore, Grant Morrison wrote Batman. You know, like there's a reason
Yeah,
why Batman sings to us in a way. And whether
yeah.
it's like the
Well,
sheer
they're
determination of will or just like the dark night of the soul, full pun intended, there's got to be something there.
yeah, they're super powerful symbols, and I I hate that, like, right now I would say that comic books are essentially like those characters have become advertising, and they've been kind of co-opted to just be advertisements to sell merch, because that's like the ultimate drive of those forums now, is to sell merch. It's like when Grant Morrison was talking about how commercials are sigils, like the Golden Arches are a sigil.
Right. Go
Now
hand
Batman's become a sigil for Warner Brothers. Now
right. Go
Warner
watch a
Brothers has
movie.
taken over that symbol. But let me see where I was going
That's
with that.
true. Yeah,
But it's
they reverse the sigil, Warner Brothers. Yeah.
yeah, they reverse the sigil. Like,
Yeah.
if it's kind of, yeah, it's looking at a Campbell soup can, and it can either be a Campbell soup can or it can be, oh shit, how did I forget his name? The
Andy
famous
Warhol?
artist who did the Campbell.
Andy
That's the
Warhol?
one.
Yeah.
Warhol turned the Campbell soup can into art, and it transcended what it was. And I think we've lost that. But
Yeah.
back then, like, a lot of these creators, they were hunting for what that, like, preternatural, like, force was behind these symbols,
Do
and
you
that's what they were driven to try and work with.
do you think that because obviously as a comic nerd I have ideas, if I was ever to be given a title for somebody established, I'd do it. Hell yeah, that, you know what I mean? But do you
Oh
think
yeah,
that that's kind of what's killing the momentum of a lot of young budding comic creators, is kind of this back end notion that the only way to actually survive is if you work with the big three, DC, Marvel, Image,
yeah,
or I guess uh
yeah,
Valiant, but not really.
yeah, yeah. They used to be like the
IDW,
fourth in the
yeah.
big four, or big five. But yeah, no,
Because
I think it kills creativity. I think it's killing
or Dark
creativity
Horse.
in comic book people.
I mean, Vertigo's
Yeah,
dead. This imprint that changed our
yeah,
lives, went out of business, or not out of business. They canceled that whole thing.
they
I
shut it
think
down.
it's more to do with the comic industry as a whole, and the fact that, yeah, the public doesn't. You have to utilize an archetype to get weird ideas through, like those writers did. Like with
Yeah,
Alan Moore with Swamp Thing, or Grant Morrison with Animal Man, or whatever. It's You kind of have to use these established things. I mean, Alan Moore took the old Charlton Comics shit, right, and used them for
yeah,
Watchmen. And I think that
yeah.
it's almost as if you have to work within those confines to really ever push forward or the conversation, which is
Yeah,
it's terrible.
yeah. It's terrible, but, like, 20 years ago they let people do what they wanted with it.
Yeah.
Like, whereas now they have to worry about, they can't mess with the Incredible Hulk because he's going to show up in the next Avengers movie, and if the Incredible Hulk in the comic is too far away from the Incredible Hulk in the movie, they're not going to move funny books.
It's
That
hilarious
they're not going to
too.
move anyways, honestly.
Well, who was it that Jason Aaron, did he have a Doctor Strange run? It was pretty recent.
Yeah,
I want to,
I think he had
yeah,
a pretty recent one. Yeah,
which is pretty good. And I think that was around, the parallel of the Doctor Strange movie coming out. And
no,
so I think there's a wider thing to be said that, comics put into the social consciousness the idea of the multiverse. They put this
yeah,
idea in of these parallel universes acting parallel to us, where like one decision in one was completely different from the other and everything was affected because of it, right? And so now
right,
it's breaking into the movies. Like, that's an occult concept.
yeah,
The multiverse is an occult concept. Here it is. We have Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness as like a Marvel movie that's going to make at least $1 billion coming out. We have a
Oh yeah,
Flash movie that's in the works where it's going to be like Flashpoint Paradox, where he meets Michael Keaton's Batman, but within the
and Ben Affleck's
Zack's
Batman.
and Ben Affleck's, like,
Yeah,
we like, it's almost a way that we can thank the occult for doing this, but we're also like, it's funny that these have to be Happy Meal versions of ideas, you know?
yeah. It's tragic. In a lot of ways, it's really tragic because I feel
Yeah.
we're missing out on a lot by not letting people do what they want with this stuff.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I would say that there's now more than ever, especially within music and writing and, within self-publishing, there's more reason than ever just to do it yourself. That's fine. But I think there is this
Yeah,
yearning that, like, you want to push these big ideas across. And the occult has always been great with this as a
yeah,
magical praxis, is that you use the Bible, you use,
hmm
playing cards, you use, pretty generalized quotients of a people to get through these very esoteric ideas, you know.
yeah.
And comics did that, they mirrored that. Now it's the movies. But comics never, even in their heyday in the 90s, never made $1 billion a comic.
Oh
you
God,
know,
no.
like,
God, no.
so like they were always doomed,
Yeah,
And
but I mean
I don't know.
that
Yeah, go ahead.
that also kind of makes them the perfect vehicle for the occult, though, because then they're not mainstream enough where everybody's getting these ideas. It's
Right.
still occulted.
Well, I think too it's like a curation thing. I think as
Yeah,
humans, or as modern folks, I should say, not as humans, because this isn't true of every culture, but we are predisposed to think that a brand denotes quality. We're predisposed to think
yeah,
that a certain avenue of creation denotes quality. And that's not the fucking case. It never has been the case. We're
yeah,
just, we think that because it has, a logo on it or a sigil, whether it's the DC or the Marvel or the Image or the Dark Horse, that people of higher note decided that this was good enough, so it must be good. And
yeah,
to me, that's
yeah.
like
It's
perfectly analogous about the occult gatekeepers that we have in modern times. You know,
oh,
I
definitely.
say, fuck all that, burn them down, create your own.
Hey,
I'm kidding,
I agree with you on that actually, but
but yeah, we should be, we should be free to love who we want to love. No, I was gonna go into that, but I think as fans and readers, like, we're always excited to see someone take a left turn with an archetype and blow the one that came before it away. Like, always. I felt that
yeah,
way about, Zack Snyder's uh new 52 run of Batman. I was like, thank you for getting rid of that convoluted bullshit, you know, uh what do you call it? Continuity, restarting it, and then getting really deep into the kind of the history and the folklore of Gotham itself. I was like, that's cool. That hasn't really been
yeah,
done. That's fun.
yeah,
So, but again, a tiny needle move, because that was kind of the thesis for his entire run, that they were like, oh, that's different. Let's do that. It wasn't like the
yeah.
Batman of Arthur Kerr or whatever, Grant Morrison's interpretation,
Oh,
which
his
was
run
in
on
popular
Batman
comics.
was
That was popular
yeah,
comics. You had
yeah.
a
That he got so
personality.
broken that he had a
Yeah,
backup personality.
his backup plan was a personality that created, that would take over if he got broken, and it was just this insane Batman of multicolored horror.
Yeah, wearing like yellow and
Yeah.
purple and
Yeah. And like I'm
yeah,
reading this and I'm like, I'm looking at the guy at the comic store next to me. He's reading this. Looking at the, the lady behind the counter at the comic store. She's reading it and I'm like, okay, I get it. Like this is what we need. We need these ideas to be presented. It just sucks that these ideas have to be presented within the mainstream like run of the big 3 or big 4.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Because there
Because I
was that
mean,
heyday.
yeah, there was definitely the heyday, but it's like at this point, like it's almost like eating McDonald's food, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's
But
just
you don't
junk
want
food.
you don't want McDonald's to like come out with a bison burger. You're not going to be like,
Yeah,
"Whoa, that
but
sounds
the other
great. I'm going to eat that." You know.
yeah, but also if they did come out with a bison burger, eventually that bison burger would be the same horrible product that every other
But that's
product
what I'm
became.
saying. But in the end, that bison burger is just, shit in a different bun. Like it's, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And
That's
like that's comics now. It's just a bunch of shit
yeah.
in different covers.
I don't want to turn this into two, uh
Yeah, a
nagging
little too
comic
deep
book
there.
nerds talking about how
Yeah,
shitty comics are these days. Because it is true. The comics, it can't be unsaid that comics are going through a steep and terrible decline. And as the medium moves into digital distribution, print comics
yeah,
are going to be sadly a novelty. And I say
yeah,
I say sadly, but not really, because people like you, who write these books, who self-publish, things that I want to do with comics, yeah, we'll find ways. We'll print them. You know what I
yeah,
mean? The whole industry doesn't need to crumble for us to do that. Although it really does kind of separate the wheat and the chaff within,
yeah,
who's really like able and willing to put their original ideas on the line rather than kind of tread the waters in the mainstream of other ideas.
yeah, yeah. It's like the difference between a cubicle farm and old fashioned farming, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. I mean, I I like the idea that things are melting down, kind of. As much as I love comics and I love, because I mean, I still madly love all these characters because
I
I
do
know
too.
what they
Yeah.
can be. But I also understand that they need to die. Like all
Yeah.
this stuff eventually needs to die because everything dies.
Well,
And
it's insane to me. It's like an analogous thing for me was like you think about the movie industry, right? You have someone like Darren Aronofsky who was going to make a
mhm,
Batman movie. And the Batman, he was like a working class. Alfred was like a mechanic. He
yeah,
wore a bat ring that he implanted on people's foreheads, like stitched up his own uniform. I'm like, that's the shit we need with these big things. And
yeah,
don't come at me with the Joker thing. That was pretty much the same shit. Like
yeah,
it made, it took a Killing Joke, but just made him, even more relatable because our
and
world is fucked and people with mental illnesses like myself are having a hard time with it. We
yeah.
get it.
And honestly, though, you could have just called that movie Clown.
Clown. Yeah. But I'm saying like in the it's become comic books have become this industry the same as Hollywood where you have these
Yeah,
auteur filmmakers coming up and being like, I've got something that no one's ever done, and we're gonna treat these characters like Jungian archetypes, and
yeah,
we're gonna like break them to the like just the foundational centers of who they are as an idea, and all
yeah,
the aesthetics and stuff will be different. And they're like, no, we need to go with another A-list actor and another kind of neo interpretation of a noir. You know what I mean? Which I'm welcoming the new. Batman looks fine or whatever, but to me it's just not far enough. It's just not far enough. And I think that's the beauty of where these writers, were experimenting with occult ideas and stuff. Like they were really able to tap into shit that literally knocked me on my ass. All of the great comics from that era just like floored me. Like absolutely still has my mind spinning. Are you still there? Yeah. There you are. Can't hear you. Oh, I think your mic's out.
Hello?
There you are.
Is it too loud now?
No, you're great. I
All
could
right.
ramble on and on, but let's throw me some more before you have to go. Throw me some more brilliant interpretations of that confluence, that river bend.
Like one of my, I'm going to go with one I didn't even mention earlier because we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, and I was looking at my shelf right before I came out here, and I was looking at the books by Hans Riekeit, and his books are like nightmares come like spread on a page. And I don't know what level that guy is working on, because he's a musician. He's a musician, he's an artist, he's a writer, and his stuff is this, I keep saying transcendent, but it's a transcendent like dream logic that really you can only find if you're really working deep inside your own head and you're really trying to find like things that nobody else is going to find. Because like we were talking about, like you wanted to define like what occult comics are. For me, I would consider a comic occult if it's mind opening in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like if
Breaking
you can look
open the
at it and you
head.
can feel like the doors, yeah, you're getting hit in the head and it's putting you in places that you wouldn't normally go. And Hans Rickeit's comics, like any of them, they have great names too. Like a collection of short works that was called Folly, and the cover is this strange Salvador Dali bunny, like crossing this like junkyard.
Go on.
But his best book is called Squirrel Machine, and it's this 200-page graphic novel where somebody is taking like living things and making it into this gigantic machine, like this interconnected like Rube Goldberg machine tied together by like sinew and muscle and guts.
What's he building in
And
there?
yeah, exactly. And like anything that Hans Rickeit puts out, I would firmly put into what I would consider an occult kind of headspace for comics, something that is truly like above and beyond as far as comics go. If you're looking for things that are gonna really work you over.
I'm gonna get these links from you. Uh,
Okay.
by the end of whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, because I would love to check that out myself. I'm sure everybody else would. Because
Yeah.
nothing to me screams more revolting than like industrial sinew.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. And
Which is what
actually,
we are made of.
yeah. And talking about that actually makes me think of Jim Woodring. If you've ever
Oh
heard
yeah.
of Jim Woodring. Yeah, his stuff. Like I know he's actually done some of the more woo stuff, and he's got some weird like mental issues that came from way earlier in his life. Like not mental health issues as much as like that's part of it, but he embraces a lot of the woo, or he did back when he started making comics, and now it just comes out in these weird tableaus that he puts, these like surrealist tableaus with a cartoon cat and a character called Manhog, who's a man pig. And it's just, and these like weird plants, like the world is this living metaphor that he's constantly wandering.
I love
That's
it.
that definitely.
It just came to mind. I was thinking about, we were talking about, the creations that we make and it coming to life. Have you illustrated anything that is, even in metaphorical sense, like has it become the sinew of an idea that actually got some bones to it?
You mean like something that I made and it kind of like made some changes in real life?
I guess there's that. I'm talking more of like, have you ever created something and seen it in passing on the street?
No, no, I haven't.
Yeah.
I kind of wish I could. Like, there are definitely some things that I kind of wish would actually kind of
A
find its way
bag
in
of
my
money.
peripheral, you know? Well, there's that too. I would love to find a bag of money on the side of the road, especially one
Yeah.
that just said "For Eric" for all of your work.
Exactly. Good job, buddy. Also, your dad is proud. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh. No, I was meaning to ask you that because there's an article that came out a couple, maybe a year or two ago, maybe recently, from Vulture talking about John Constantine,
Constantine.
and the creators. I found this quote uh, from a multitude of creators saying how they have he's actually come into their lives like as a passing apparition.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, and like even like Grant Morrison, he had Superman. He talked to Superman.
That's right. We also talked to aliens and Kathmandu, and he,
Yeah,
that's another thing we should talk about. Is Grant Morrison, this kind of chaos magic slash method acting of getting into a
yeah,
character, and him conversing like in the Invisibles. The Beatles are in the beginning and stuff, and he's talking about how he did this with Kurt Cobain too, where there'll be a piece of art and he'll play a copy of John Lennon or Kurt Cobain's guitar. In Kurt Cobain's case, he wore big glasses and a feather boa, and like reached this
yeah,
transcendental state where he was living them,
yeah.
and it's that kind of supreme method acting too. And I wonder, as a writer,
Hmm.
sometimes if that's even necessary. I don't know if Grant Morrison ever wrote about Kurt Cobain. I'm not entirely sure, or used him
I,
like as a major character in a story.
I
I
don't
can't.
think so.
Yeah, I can't think of it. But he he would do this thing and talk to gods. He would call them gods.
Yeah,
He would put these things on, do these rituals, and really by rituals I mean very much a method acting, like Lee Strasberg studio, acting of, you know, like living the character. And,
yeah.
you know, to me, that's that slapback echo. That's that reverb of the occult, or of like, especially in using uh, these experiences and these rituals to get into the mind of something, and how it
Mm.
could be detrimental. I mean, do you really want to invoke Kurt Cobain like into your
Yeah, you'd think
being?
that that would be like kind of the last things you would want to invoke.
I'm a a childhood fan of Kurt Cobain and everything, and I've spent a lot of my life realizing that like I need to be less like Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, yeah.
That was the whole point.
He's
But like,
yeah, he's
there's,
more of a warning than a role model.
well, yeah, I don't think he was either. I think he just has become so human over the years. It's like it's a wonder to me that anyone deifies anyone. Like, to be completely
Yeah, I
honest,
don't understand it.
I don't
I
understand
don't
how
understand it.
anybody puts other people on pedestals like that. Like, we're all
Yeah,
just so beautifully like corrupt and weird and non-linear. Like, there's any idea you have of somebody is just a mere fraction of who they truly are,
yeah,
and to deify that fraction is just insane. And it comes back
yeah,
into that, you know why I was bringing this up with meeting creations that you create, like you're creating a fraction of this
Yeah.
of this character. Like even as a writer,
Hmm.
coming up with the character, I couldn't tell you, the dental records. I couldn't tell you,
Yeah.
if his butt was slapped when he was born. You know what I mean? Like I don't know those
Yeah.
specifics. We're like only allowed in kind of a hollow but obtuse viewpoint of
Yeah.
what this person is. And I was thinking about that, and then remembered this article that came out about John Constantine, and every writer's interaction with Constantine was a fragment. It was like a
Yeah.
fraction of an idea. It wasn't going and getting shit faced with him, at the pub and listening to
Yeah.
Mucous Membrane, whatever on vinyl, you know,
Yeah.
like it wasn't that. It
Yeah. It's just
wasn't
like a
a.
brief glimpse.
It's a brief glimpse, and here I'll read this quote, and this goes back to Jamie Delano. It starts too. So
Hmm.
this is about John Constantine. Jamie Delano ran into him during a stroll near the British Museum, back when he was writing the first few arcs on Constantine's solo series, Hellblazer. The figure caught my eye and cocked his head, flicked the ash from a ciggy, and continued without stopping, Delano told me. For a few moments I considered following, but thought better of it. I mean, what the fuck would I say? And what trouble might one get into? Peter Milligan saw Constantine at a party around 2009 and rushed after him, only to find he disappeared. So I think Peter Milligan's like the only one that actually chased after him. But Brian
Yeah.
Azzarello, 100 Bullets, Brian Azzarello, saw him at a Chicago bar in the early aughts, but avoided him. This is my favorite. The thing is about John is the last thing you'd want is to be his friend, he told me.
Yeah.
As far as I've been able to deduce, Constantine's only ever spoken to one writer, the man who created him, Alan Moore. According to Moore, he ran into John years after he'd stopped writing him, and the wisecracking mage whispered 13 words to him. I'll tell you the ultimate secret of magic. Any cunt can do it.
Yeah. That is the best quote.
Oh man,
Best
it's
quote.
never been said better. Any cunt can do it. And
Yeah.
there goes the
I'm
demonetization
gonna.
on this YouTube live stream.
Yeah.
Well, how much more time do you have? Oh, did you stall? I think you're all over the place. Chat, thank you guys so much for hanging out. This is only going to be part one of our comics conversation. I need to figure out a different way to title these because comics in the occult is such a loaded and absolutely generic title. Oh,
Yeah.
is Eric back? Can you hear me? You good?
Me? I can hear
There you
you.
go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are.
All right.
But I'm guessing that you have to get home.
Yeah, I got to get back inside. It's almost Orion's bath time. So.
Well, as I was telling the chat, I knew that we wouldn't touch on 80% of the things that we had
Oh,
planned.
yeah.
So let
Yeah,
this be
even the
part
stuff we
one.
talked about earlier.
Yeah, we had
Yeah.
conversed earlier, Eric and I, and we're like, oh, I want to talk
Yeah.
about this, talk about that. But
Yeah. Didn't even
this is the
touch
beauty of
80% of it.
yeah, this is the beauty of liminal streams. So I'm gonna retitle this as Comics in the Occult Part 1. Eric, I'll have you back for part 2. We'll dig deeper and we'll just keep going because this is a
Definitely.
confluence that we keep waiting in. So
Yeah. We got any questions in the chat?
yeah. Also, please check out the Bottomless Bag, which is on wethehallowed.org. Eric posts a new component of his Bibliomantic Oracle every Monday. And if you haven't yet, check out the Disruption Generator. The Disruption Generator is a Bibliomantic Oracle Eric Millar divined last year, I think it was, and did it by
Yeah.
posting he would use a word generator and then illustrate that word and post it on We the Hallowed every day for 180 something crazy.
120. 120
120.
days.
120. I should know this by now.
Yeah.
And you can get it on book form on the Amazon. It's through We the Hallowed, and I use it every day. You'll see it as the album, the episode art for all of the Pragmagic episodes. Eric Millar, dear friend, thank you, sir. Appreciate you hanging out in your
Thank
car
you.
with us.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Anytime, man. Anytime.
We'll get you on in a couple weeks, and we'll do part two for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. For sure. For sure.
All right, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, talk to you later.
All right, folks. That was Eric Millar. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry about some of the audio issues. I'll have it worked out, but this is number 2 of the Liminal Stream. I'd like to announce that for next Monday, kind of a special surprise, going to be talking about modern occult cinema with Thomas Sheridan on this Liminal Stream. So hopefully we'll get like an earlier time so it works with him, but he'll be here to talk to me about a lot of this hoopla concerning the aesthetics of the occult within modern horror cinema. And it should be fun. I loved his reviews on Hereditary, and I think Ari Aster gets a little too much accolade considering that he's still kind of buying into the Christian scare tactic that the occult is scary. It is not, it's whatever you want it to be. And with that, I want to thank everyone on Patreon. If you're a Patreon supporter, you got a full unreleased demo. Um, and I was going to show Eric this. I'll close on it. This is in work progress. Eric Millar, he'll just have to catch it on the stream later, hopefully. But this is in the work progress for the We the Hallowed sigil that has been long in the works. Eric Millar and I collabed. I kill me if I ever say collabed again. We collaborated on this song for the We the Hallowed sigil, and after that, gonna end the stream. Thanks to everyone in chat: Oswald Spangler, John Aside, Michelle Embry, Philip Blair. Thank you guys so much. Of course, Miss Mary McKeever. Um, yeah, and I'm gonna end now with just a short snippet of a taste of what the audio sigil from We the Hallowed is gonna come out to be. And with that, I love you guys and haunt on.